Carroll Shelby's unknown car was real, but nobody opened his personal garage to find it. On March 3, 2018, a search team reached a rural North Texas property and identified a rusting 1967 GT500 experimental coupe called Little Red, a prototype experts had long believed destroyed. Its engine, hood, and front bodywork were gone. Yet one overlooked Ford VIN proved the shell belonged to Shelby history. How did this one-of-one Mustang survive, and what had Shelby built it to test? On March 3, 2018, a small team entered a rural property in North Texas. Collector Craig Jackson had helped organize the search. Restoration expert Jason Billups had helped follow the trail. They were not opening Carroll Shelby's personal garage. They were walking toward a group of old vehicles sitting outside. Among them was a badly damaged Mustang coupe. Its suspension had collapsed. Rust had spread across the body. Its hood, engine, and much of its front bodywork were missing. According to the team behind the Shelby Prototype Coupes project, the car had remained on the property for roughly 20 years. Nothing about the broken shell looked priceless. For decades, Shelby historians had searched for a red experimental Mustang known as Little Red. Most believed Ford had destroyed it after Shelby American finished testing it. Prototype cars were working tools. Once their purpose ended, they were often dismantled or crushed rather than preserved for future collectors. Yet this forgotten Mustang had survived. The team identified it as the missing 1967 Shelby GT500 EXP prototype. Little Red was reportedly the only GT500 notchback coupe ever built by Shelby American. Regular Shelby Mustangs used the more familiar fastback body, making this formal roof coupe unusual before anyone examined what had once been under its hood. Records also described it as the second GT500 to be serialized and completed. The popular version of the story turns this moment into the opening of a secret garage. The documented version is less polished but more remarkable. The car was not protected beneath a cover in Shelby's private collection. It had been stripped, passed through private hands, and left outdoors while experts continued to declare it lost. Nor had it been completely unknown. Ford and Shelby employees knew the prototype during the 1960s. What disappeared was its clear identity. By 2018, even its damaged body no longer revealed what it had once been. The rusting body looked ordinary, but it began life as a Mustang Ford had built specifically for Shelby to experiment on. Little Red began with an unusual request in August 1966. Only a few months earlier, Ford had defeated Ferrari at the 24 Hours of Le Mans with help from Shelby American. Now Carroll Shelby's team was turning its attention back to the Mustang. Ford's San Jose plant received an order for 3 special cars, a fastback, a convertible, and a notchback coupe. Each body style offered Shelby's engineers a different path for the next generation of performance Mustangs. The coupe was the strangest choice. Shelby had built his Mustang name around the fastback. Its sloping roof looked fast even when the car was parked. A notchback had a more formal shape, with a flat trunk and a clear break behind the rear window. It looked closer to an ordinary family Mustang. That plain body made it useful. Shelby American could test whether the GT500 name might work on a coupe that appeared more comfortable and less aggressive. Ford could also study whether buyers wanted Shelby styling without the fastback body. The car was sent directly from Ford to Shelby American. Chief Engineer Fred Goodell and his team then turned it into an experimental machine. It was not built on a hidden assembly line, and it was not a private project created inside Carroll Shelby's home garage. Ford and Shelby employees worked on it as part of an official development program. Little Red was also seen outside the workshop. Period photographs recorded its changing appearance, and the car was displayed while Ford considered new Mustang ideas. People knew it existed during the 1960s. What made it mysterious came later. Little Red never became a regular model that customers could order. Shelby American produced no line of GT500 notchback street coupes behind it. Once the experiments ended, the single car became easier to lose because there were no matching production vehicles keeping its identity alive. That distinction matters. Little Red was not a secret car that nobody had ever seen. It was a one-of-one development car that vanished after the people who knew it moved on, and its paper trail became confused. Its body made Little Red rare, but the machinery Shelby placed beneath that body made it dangerous. Little Red did not keep one engine, one transmission, or even one fixed appearance. It was a working test car, so Shelby's engineers changed it whenever they wanted to study a new idea. At its heart was Ford's 428 cubic inch Police Interceptor V8. The big engine already gave the GT500 serious power, but Shelby's team wanted to learn how far it could be pushed. One of Little Red's best-known forms used two Paxton superchargers. A supercharger forces extra air into an engine, allowing it to burn more fuel and create more power. Using two of them on a street-based Mustang was an extreme experiment for the late 1960s. The engine's force created another problem. Little Red used a 3-speed C6 automatic transmission instead of the manual gearbox normally associated with Shelby performance. Accounts from the restoration project say the original transmission tail housing broke during testing. The team replaced it with a stronger cast iron Lincoln part. This was exactly why Little Red existed. Shelby American was not simply building a fast showpiece. Its engineers were testing how the engine, transmission, cooling system, suspension, and rear axle behaved when pushed beyond normal limits. The car's appearance changed as well. It wore bright red paint, a black vinyl roof, special grille lights, side scoops, and a fiberglass hood. Its rear treatment included a raised deck lid and wide taillights inspired by the Ford Thunderbird. Some versions used a vented hood to release heat from the powerful engine. Because Little Red changed during testing, old reports do not always list the same equipment. Some describe different carburetors or transmission setups. That does not mean several Red prototypes existed. It shows that this single Mustang carried many experiments at different times. The restored car would later represent its famous twin Paxton configuration, but the engineers of 1967 were not trying to preserve one perfect version. They were learning which ideas worked, which parts failed, and which changes might reach future cars. So which makes Little Red more important to you, the twin supercharged engine, or the fact that it was the only Shelby GT500 coupe? Tell us which part of its history matters more. Its power made it unforgettable to the people who tested it. Yet the feature that reached the most customers had little to do with its engine. Shelby never placed Little Red into production, but one Ford executive saw that its shape could sell a different kind of Mustang. Little Red's engine was too costly and extreme for an ordinary Mustang. Its appearance, however, offered Ford something it could sell. During 1967, the Red prototype was shown at a Ford preview event in Los Angeles. Its notchback roof gave it a more formal shape than a Shelby Fastback, but the special body parts still made it look powerful. Ford's Southern California sales manager, Lee Gray, saw the car and recognized an opportunity. California was one of Ford's most important Mustang markets. Dealers there wanted a special model that would stand apart from the growing number of Camaros, Firebirds, and other muscle cars. Little Red provided the basic visual idea. Under Lee Iacocca's direction, Ford developed what became the 1968 Mustang California Special, or GT/CS. The production car borrowed Shelby-inspired details, including side scoops, a raised rear deck, special badging, and wide Thunderbird-style taillights. But Ford left Little Red's most expensive machinery behind. The California Special did not receive twin Paxton superchargers or a specially reinforced transmission. Buyers could order it with regular Mustang engines and options. Ford had separated the prototype's dramatic appearance from the experimental power that made it difficult and costly to produce. This changes the meaning of Little Red. It was more than an unfinished GT500 coupe. Its design helped shape a Mustang that ordinary customers could enter a dealership and buy. Ford reportedly produced more than 4,000 California specials during the 1968 model year, allowing part of Little Red's identity to survive even after the original prototype disappeared. Subscribe if you enjoy automotive stories that separate popular legends from the records, vince, and machines that prove what really happened. Little Red had now served two purposes. It tested the limits of Shelby performance, and it gave Ford a design that could reach thousands of drivers. Once those jobs were complete, however, the company had little reason to preserve an aging experimental car. Little Red had influenced the production Mustang, but the prototype itself was about to vanish from Ford's recorded story. Experimental cars often live short lives. They are built to answer questions, test parts, and expose problems before a production model reaches customers. Once that work ends, manufacturers may dismantle or crush them. There are practical reasons for this. A prototype may contain unsafe parts, unfinished systems, or equipment that was never approved for public roads. Selling it can create legal and technical problems. Destroying it closes those risks. Little Red was expected to meet that fate. After its work with Shelby American ended, the coupe was reportedly returned to Ford. The accepted story said it was later crushed. There was no famous auction, museum display, or complete ownership file proving otherwise. As the years passed, the belief became so strong that many Shelby experts stopped treating Little Red as a missing car. They treated it as a destroyed one. Its companion prototype had been luckier. The 1968 Shelby coupe known as Green Hornet survived after reportedly being sold through a Ford employee auction in 1971. It passed through several owners and was eventually recognized and restored. Little Red left no trail that clear. Some later reports say its supercharger was removed and the car reached courtesy Ford in Colorado before entering private ownership. However, much of that period was poorly documented. Parts disappeared, owners changed, and the Mustang slowly stopped looking like the machine Shelby had tested. Collectors still searched for it, but their efforts shared one major problem. They followed the Shelby serial number. That number identified Little Red after Shelby American transformed it, yet it did not lead through the ordinary state registration records that followed the car later. The clue that finally broke the search was not hidden inside Shelby's files. It was attached to the ordinary Ford Mustang the car had been before Shelby touched it. The possibility emerged while Craig Jackson's Green Hornet was undergoing another restoration. Jackson and Jason Billups began questioning the accepted story. People said Little Red had been crushed, but could anyone point to a final document confirming its destruction? The answer appeared to be no. That did not prove the car survived. It only meant the search had ended with an assumption. Billups began looking beyond Shelby records and into the Ford documents created before the coupe received its experimental identity. There, the team found a different number connected to the same body. The search did not change when the team found a new witness. It changed when they stopped searching for a Shelby. Before Little Red became a Shelby experiment, it was an ordinary Ford Mustang body. That meant it had received a Ford Vehicle Identification Number at the San Jose assembly plant. The Ford VIN was separate from the serial identity later connected to its Shelby work. During research on Green Hornet, the team found a factory inventory sheet that linked Little Red to its original Ford number. Earlier searchers had focused on the Shelby serial number, but that trail kept ending because the car's later registrations were tied to the Ford VIN. Once Jason Billups followed that number, the history began moving again. It led to an early registration and then toward the vehicle's last known owner. The team made contact through social media in February 2018 and arranged to meet in Texas. On March 3, Billups arrived with automotive journalist Al Rogers and Mustang specialist Todd Haller. They were allowed onto the rural property where the car had spent roughly 2 decades. The vehicle waiting there barely resembled the photographs of Little Red. Its powerful 428 engine and C6 transmission were gone. So were its Shelby hood and front fenders. The suspension had collapsed, and years of outdoor storage had damaged the body. It looked like an incomplete 1967 Mustang coupe surrounded by other aging vehicles. A Ford VIN had led them to the car, but a matching number alone was not enough. Valuable Shelby Mustangs have been copied and rebuilt many times. The team needed proof that several independent details pointed to the same conclusion. Ford and Mustang historian Kevin Marty helped examine the evidence. The investigators checked serial markings, production dates, factory codes, body details, and confidential records. Each clue had to match what Ford had built and what Shelby American had later modified. Together, those details identified the damaged coupe as the missing experimental GT500 known as Little Red. The discovery also explained why the car had remained hidden. It had not been sealed inside a secret building. Its Shelby parts had been removed, its appearance had changed, and researchers had spent decades following an identity that no longer appeared in its registration trail. The right car was still there. The wrong number had made it nearly invisible. Finding the body settled the largest mystery. Little Red had escaped destruction. But the shell could not show every engine, transmission, and body design Shelby had tested during its changing life. Finding Little Red answered whether it survived, but rebuilding it raised a harder question: which version of an ever-changing experiment should return? Little Red had survived, but survival did not mean it was complete. The engine, transmission, hood, front fenders, and many experimental parts had disappeared. Restoring the car would require more than repairing rust. The team first had to decide which Little Red to rebuild. Shelby American had changed the coupe many times during testing. Different photographs and records showed different equipment. Restoring every version at once was impossible, so Craig Jackson and Jason Billups chose the configuration that best represented the car's experimental power. They studied original Shelby schematics, period photographs, factory documents, and evidence still present on the body. They also spoke with people who had worked around the car during its early life. Those accounts helped explain details that drawings alone could not answer. The restoration took roughly 2 years. Little Red received a replacement 428 Police Interceptor V8 with twin Paxton superchargers. The strengthened C6 automatic transmission included the heavy cast-iron tail housing linked to its testing history. The team also recreated the vented hood, special grille lights, rear styling, black vinyl roof, and bright red finish. This was not an untouched car pulled from storage and cleaned. It was a careful reconstruction built around an authenticated original body. The difference matters. Its identity came from the surviving shell, numbers, date codes, and documents. Many of the parts needed to show its famous experimental form had to be found or recreated. On January 16, 2020, the restored Little Red was unveiled at the Barrett-Jackson auction in Scottsdale. Beside it stood Green Hornet, the other experimental Shelby notchback coupe. It was reportedly the first time the two had appeared together. The moment closed a story that had remained unfinished for nearly half a century. Nobody discovered an unknown car inside Carroll Shelby's personal garage. Little Red had been known in the 1960s, used for serious development work, and then separated from the parts and records that explained its importance. It survived outdoors because one ordinary Ford identity remained attached to an extraordinary Shelby experiment. If the documented story of Little Red is more interesting than the garage myth, like this documentary and share it with someone who may have heard only the legend. The car was not truly hidden. Its meaning was. And Little Red was only half of Shelby's experimental coupe story. Green Hornet tested fuel injection, independent rear suspension, and four-wheel disc brakes, technology that pointed even further into the Mustang's future.